Hi, this is Bob Wells here, and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. This is the show where we hear about people's interests and uncover some fascinating stories at the same time. I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. In today's show, I'm in the South Lincolnshire village of Langtoft at Penfield Nature Reserve, accompanied by Augy Harrison. Penfield is a former quarry which is now being turned into a wildlife area and managed by a team of volunteers, and today I'm with Augy Harrison. Hello and welcome to the show, Augy.
Good morning, Bob. Thank you for coming to our Penfield Nature Reserve. We're currently standing at what I'd describe as the main viewpoint, which is just in from the car park and not far from our pedestrian entrance, which is the Kissing Gates. And as you can see here, we've got a nice elevated view looking out across the main lake there, and you can pretty much see all the reserve right out to the distance there.
It's great to have you on, Augy, and it really is a lovely area. I came across this by chance probably about 6 months ago. It's absolutely amazing. So just for our listeners, we're in the English village of Langtoft, which is about 13 or 14 miles north of Peterborough, right on the west side of the Fens. We're in a November morning. The sun hasn't been up that long. It's about 9.5, 10 degrees. I think it's been raining overnight, hasn't it, Augy?
Yes, I believe so. We've had a lot of rain in the last few days, so we might find the ground a bit soft underfoot this morning, but overall the site most of the time is fairly well drained, partly being a quarry and the fact that where we have the footpaths is on an elevated section at the edge.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely beautiful, and I can recommend the reserve to anybody if you're in this area. Okay, so before we talk about Penfield, Augy, can you just please tell us a bit about yourself and how and why you became involved with the project?
Right, my love of wildlife really starts when I was quite a small boy. I grew up in Bath. Our house garden backed onto the canal in Bath, and at that time it hadn't really been opened up for navigation, although a lot of it had been restored. That's the Kennet and Avon Canal. And there was a lot of wildlife there, and I used to quite like going out and sitting and just watching, seeing things like water voles, actually watching the fish down in the water. We had a field next to us. We got quite a lot of butterflies in that. And as a young lad, I guess probably one of the key moments was came across a caterpillar, a really extraordinary looking thing. It was an elephant hawk moth caterpillar.
Oh, wow.
So if any of you are familiar with those, they're quite large. It has some large eye patterns towards the head of the caterpillar. So I bought that in and got some fuchsia leaves, which is what it was feeding on, and fed it, and it eventually turned into a cocoon, and that sort of fascinated me. That particular one didn't hatch out, but I then had a few more caterpillars that I've fed, and a few hatched out, and it sort of instilled an early interest. Then career-wise, I've done lots of different things. So I've had 3 different jobs. I worked on the railway initially. I left school at 16, was a driver's assistant, which is almost like a trainee driver.
Yeah.
I did that for about 4 years, but decided it wasn't the career for me. I then did a manpower services TOPS course and retrained as a carpenter. Then went out and worked in the construction industry for 14 years. And that was doing general carpentry, but mostly doing formwork, so working on big civil engineering sites, doing the moulds for concrete.
And was that all around the country?
No, it was mainly in the southwest. So I was in Bath. There was very little construction at that time in Bath, so it was mostly Swindon, but also Bristol, and a few areas around. About the furthest away from home I ever worked was Minehead. Yeah. Worked on a new swimming pool for Butlins down there, so did a little bit of travelling, but not that much with that. And also a more interesting one was there's Culham in Oxfordshire. It's where they had the JET project, the Joint European Tourist, which was the prototype fusion reactor. And this was back in the 80s when Ronald Reagan had his Star Wars project. didn't work on the fusion reactor, but in the building next to it, we effectively made a giant Lego kit, which was blocks that all slotted together to form a building where they put targets for very high-powered lasers.
Wow.
So that was our job, making the giant bricks and putting all the footings in. Then throughout this time, I raced motorbikes as a hobby in the sport of drag racing. And that really got my engineering interest going. And so in my mid-30s, suddenly decided, maybe I should be doing engineering. Managed to get myself through university, did an engineering degree, and got a job with Perkins up here in Peterborough. And that's where I worked for the next 20 years. And now enjoying some retirement.
So that's a long and interesting and varied career there, Augy. In terms of the management of Penfield, can you just tell us a bit about how it works?
Yeah, so I should have got back onto how also I got involved here. So I maintained that interest in wildlife throughout my life. So myself and my wife always love walking, but particularly we don't walk distance and at speed or anything. It's more about enjoying the environment we're in. Yeah. And we get very excited about seeing wildlife in the wild. So back in 2018, the village was aware that it was going to inherit this site, the Penfield site. So they asked for volunteers to come forward and help manage it, because the parish council didn't want to take on the managing of the nature reserve as well as run the parish. So we went to a group meeting back in 2018, volunteered and joined the other group that now manages the site. Unfortunately, it then took a long time for it all to get handed over. COVID intervened. We had some strong objections from a farmer who's our neighbour about rabbits. So and legal people got involved. So it took several years, but we finally the site got handed over and sold to the village in May of last year.
So just to recap on this, this is a former quarry.
Yes.
And who actually ran the quarry, and how long did it last for?
Well, I don't know the full timing, but what it used to be, and this is where the name comes from, used to belong to the Peasgood family who farmed the land. Yeah. And this area here was where they kept their livestock pens, I think mainly sheep pens here, so hence the name Penfield. When they decided to sell the land to the quarry, so it could be quarried, they were very concerned because at that particular time a lot of former quarries were being turned into landfill sites. So in order to protect this area, they made it a stipulation that the site get restored to a natural state and that it be sold back to the village for £1.
For £1?
For £1, yes. So that's what's now transpired. I'm assuming the quarry, we're probably talking about 20 to 25 years ago that the quarry was worked out. It's now Hanson's. I'm not sure who the quarry company was that Hanson's absorbed, but it's currently Hanson's, and they're still extracting gravel from the area.
So is it still owned by Hanson's, or is it now owned by the village?
It's now owned by the village. We're fully responsible for it, yes.
Wow. And roughly how many acres are there?
So it's a 20-acre site.
A big site.
Yes, yeah. It's a good size. Not huge, but a pretty decent size, which means it can support quite a bit of wildlife in here, which is good.
Excellent. So with the 20 acres, Augy, what does Penfield comprise of?
Well, we've got some mature woodland plantation, and when I say mature, I mean 15 years or more old.
Relatively mature.
Relatively mature. Right in front of us now, we have a very rich grassland area. This is very fertile topsoil that's quite deep, and that's one of the tasks we've got, is to try and make it slightly poorer and encourage more wildflowers.
So I guess this would have been the original field before they came and quarried next to it?
What we're actually looking at, it's all backfill. So we discovered this very much when we put up some fencing here, that as soon as you dig a hole in, there's quite deep topsoil. So when they restored the area, I think most of the topsoil was this end, so it all got just...
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So the natural ground level is close to where we are because we're on the elevated bit, but most of the site is about 4 metres lower where the gravel's all been extracted.
Okay.
You've also got young plantations, so some younger trees down towards the south end of the site. Some of those are only 6 or 7 years old. We've got some damp grassland, sort of down on the low-level areas. We have quite a large lake in front of us up on this north end. Then 2 large ponds in the south end, and one quite small pond, but the small pond is actually very good for the invertebrates. We got newts and things like that in there.
What sort of depth are the ponds?
We don't know. So we haven't done a proper survey. I got some waders to put a depth gauge in the other day, and just at the edge of the pond near the reeds, I was almost up to my chest. So...
it could be pretty deep.
Yes. It's not going to be very deep. I suspect it gets a little deeper. It's certainly... you can drown in it, so you want to be careful. It's not something we want anybody going in the water, really, or swimming. We don't know what's under the water or left from the quarry works. Yeah. So it potentially could be hazardous. Yeah. The ponds, I think, are shallower. You can see the bottom in a lot of them. So... and then I should have mentioned there's some poor grassland as well. That's more towards the south of the site as well, where there's very poor soil, but that's actually where we find some of the interesting wildflowers and things. So what the site benefits, I've just reeled off that list of different habitats. It's the range of different habitats we've got here.
And your job as a sort of management volunteer team is to keep that going.
Very much so. So our main job here is to maintain it. Yeah. We've got a very good, diverse site at the moment. We're going to try and enhance it a little, but probably more importantly is just maintain it. And one of the challenges there is that the trees are very good at self-seeding. So, and the site was undisturbed for a long time, and it would be very easy for it all to turn into woodland. And we'd lose a lot of the interesting habitat that supports a lot of the invertebrates.
That's an interesting point, actually, because I guess some listeners may take the view that actually just letting it go totally wild with trees is the way to go, but that's not the case if you want diversity then, Augy.
Yes, that's not the case if you want diversity and if you want wildlife. You'll often get less in woodlands than you will in a mixed habitat like this.
So is that because they can't travel as far? They can't move around as much?
There's an awful lot of species, particularly invertebrates, that rely on grasslands, wildflowers and open areas. There isn't anything for them to eat in the woods, so you'd lose all that if you just let it go to woodland.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at the trees, just to give listeners an idea, I mean, we're in sort of autumn, certainly we're right in the middle of autumn now. Most of the trees have got half the leaves off. Lots of different yellows and golds and greens and browns. It really is a beautiful place.
Yes. Would you like to have a look round?
I'd love to, Augy, yes.
A walk down to the lakeside path.
Are we going to do the whole 20 acres, or is this sort of mini version?
Yes, we are. Hopefully we'll have time. What we've got here is a perimeter walk along the elevated bank, and that allows us to see the site but leave large areas undisturbed. So that was very much with the planning of how we laid out the paths. We want the wildlife to have areas where they're undisturbed.
Yes.
And with the intention we were hoping it would keep the wildlife around.
Hence the sign, the public are welcome but no dogs, thank you, on this particular path.
Yes, so that's another very good point you raised there. There was a lot of debate when we took over the site on whether dogs would be allowed on the site. I don't have a dog myself, but I was the school of thought that most of the walkers in the village are dog owners. And if we didn't allow dogs on site, we would be excluding a huge part of the village, and that didn't seem right or fair.
No.
So the solution we came up with is a perimeter walk that's along the west and the south bank, where dog walkers get to enjoy all the views. We've created it as a circular walk, so they don't have to do the same bit of route twice. No. But it also means that the dogs aren't really coming down into the site where the wildlife is. And that was something we were concerned about, and certainly some people were very vocal of, you let dogs in, you lose all your wildlife. What we found through using hidden cameras is this policy appears to have worked. We still get deer in here, we get hare in here, the rabbits are here. They haven't been driven out, and I believe that's because the dogs are kept at a distance from
So it's a win-win, really, that.
It is, yes. Yeah. We've created one extra path, which is for pedestrians only, and this runs down by the lakeside. So again, a key thing, we couldn't have dogs going in the water. Some of the flea treatments will kill all your invertebrates in the water if the dogs go in the water.
Yeah.
But also, again, it keeps them that distance. So we hope we've got the right balance of allowing dog walkers in, that they can come and enjoy the site, but at the same time we protect the wildlife and maintain and hopefully encourage what we've got here.
I can see there's a bench. It looks like a fairly new bench, Augy.
It is. So this was donated by the local Women's Institute, and it was to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of the Queen. So you'll find we've got 5 benches on site.
Yeah.
The parish council has actually funded the other ones, but what they've done is funded materials, and then we've built and put up the benches. But as I mentioned to your listeners before, this site has just some gorgeous views. It's very difficult to describe. We're now at this bench. We're looking up a beautiful lake with autumn colours in the trees either side. Really quiet, and all you can see is a wild area stretching out ahead of you. The sun.
It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, we're looking south now. The sun to our east slightly. It's absolutely beautiful. And I think what's interesting is that this was once flat. It then became a quarry, and now it's turned into a lake. You could be in the Lake District.
Almost, yes, yes. But also different for the local area. It is all flatlands around here, and if you walked in here, you wouldn't realise that you're suddenly at the top of a hill, effectively, looking down on some lakes, because the ground level at the bottom, as I said earlier, about 4 metres below the top, so it gives us a real height and depth.
I can just see a bird taking off.
Yeah, that was a cormorant. So
a cormorant.
Cormorant, yes. There are some fish in the lake. The cormorant's an occasional visitor, so you're quite lucky. You won't see him regularly here, and gets spooked quite quickly. As you can see, he's gone. Obviously, he spotted us.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other quite exciting one we saw when we were installing another bench. We haven't got them as residents, but twice saw a kingfisher. So they
are quite rare, I believe.
Yes, but really striking. The kingfishers. That's a fantastic bird to see. Very exotic looking. So you'll never forget the iridescent blue colour of seeing a kingfisher fly.
So most of the volunteers managed to see that, did they?
No, just myself. I think one of my other colleagues, Pete, when we were down initially doing a foundation for the bench down by the lake, which we'll go to in a minute. And then when we were installing it, so twice got to see it, which was really good.
Amazing. So where are we going now?
Right, we're carrying on walking down towards the lake. So again, with this first bench, the intention there is it's very near the entrance. So we do have a few people locally that are a bit infirm, can't walk very far, but at least it's fairly easy from the car park to get to that bench.
Yes.
And enjoy sitting down and taking in the views.
Would it be possible for people in wheelchairs to come here?
Just about. A little tricky at the moment. We do have a long-term plan that we want to improve the access. So we're currently in negotiations with a cable company that provides an internet service who had said they would like to help, but we've not been able to finalise anything yet. But what they would potentially do is provide a digger and a man for us to create a level path where we're walking now.
Yes.
To allow wheelchair access down to the lakeside.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great stuff.
And then where we were standing earlier, the viewing area, we'd quite like to make that a little wider, level it out and put some hard standing there, so that from the car park entrance you'd be able to come in a wheelchair and sit on that area, and maybe add a bench as well, so
Yes.
Somebody accompanying someone in a wheelchair could sit with them.
Yeah.
And just sit and enjoy watching the birds on the bird feeder, and again the lovely view out over the lake.
Yes. So here we are. It's by the water's edge, and another bench. Did you say you made these benches, Augy?
Yes. So was able to use my carpentry skills to put these together. The design I actually copied from the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust, because I saw one at their Willow Tree Fen Reserve and thought, oh yeah, that's quite comfortable to sit on.
And it looks pretty robust. It looks as though it's going to last a long time.
Yes, that's the hope. We don't want to be replacing them regularly. So we copied that, and then our volunteers all help assemble them here on site and have helped treat them, and these are all coated with saddling, so that'll help keep the weather out and make the finish of the bench look very nice.
And you did the installation with the concrete and everything, did you?
Yes. Yeah, so again, that was all roped our volunteers in to do that. And
It looks very professional, I have to say.
I would hope so, because it was my career for a long time, yes.
Yes. So what is the long-term goal of the project? I know you said that you want to turn it into a wildlife area. It looks pretty wild to me at the moment.
Right.
What's the
Yes.
long-term goal?
The long-term goal, I sort of touched on earlier, is really maintaining it. So before we took the site over, we were careful to do some detailed wildlife surveys, and we got some help from the likes of John Oliver at the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust, from Sarah Lambert and Peter Kirby at the Langtoft Trust. They were particularly helpful. They have a lot of expertise, and they did a really detailed report on what we have here on site already. And the site is already an excellent wildlife site. The wildlife has moved in. We've got a few rare species here. So the long-term aim really is to maintain that and build on it. We're going to, in the rich grasslands, get a few more wildflowers established, which will help improve the butterfly population, which is already quite good.
So does that mean you'll bring seeds in?
Yes, so we've already started some planting, but we're trying as much to use domestic species. There's a company in Nottinghamshire, Naturescape, that specialise in keeping domestic strains. So you could go out to a garden centre and buy stuff, but they might not naturally be native species. So we're doing as much as possible to ensure anything we introduce is native species, and we're limiting it to just the rich grassland where we won't interfere with some of the rarer plants that are already here.
Already there, yeah.
And then I've mentioned about the providing disabled access, so that's something that's definitely on the agenda. We want to improve that. We also want to make it, well, I think we're already there actually, and made it a really nice place for the community here to enjoy. It's also open for anyone else to visit, but Langtoft itself is a village that's surrounded by lakes. If you put a couple of mile radius around us, there's loads of them, but these are the only ones you've got access to, which is a shame.
And all these lakes are former quarries?
Yes. So at least now the village has got a place that people can enjoy. And then we'd very much like to make it an educational site as well. So we've had a little taste of that. We had an open day back in September, and we had lots of activities for young people to do. It's very important to get that spark of interest in wildlife in the next generation, because they're going to need to inherit it and take care of it. And the best way to do that is actually for them to have wildlife encounters. So we had one of our group, Josh Jones, he did a moth trap. Now moths, I could go on about them for ages, but they're a fascinating hidden world that most people never get to see because they fly at night. There's a few daytime flying ones, but most of them you never get to see. And the colour and variety of moths is amazing. On this site, we've now recorded, thanks to Josh's work, over 350 different species of moth.
350?
Yes, that's different species. You know, in a night you can get a couple of hundred moths in the moth trap. So on the open day, he brought his moth trap along, ran it the night before, and was able to show a lot of the visitors some of the beautiful moths we have. We had John Oliver again from the Wildlife Trust demonstrating his skulls. I did a pond dipping, which is, we haven't got safe access to the water here, so I literally took the wildlife from the pond and put it in a fish tank, and the children were fascinated. And just to give you an example, one girl, she was thrilled to see the water spider. We only have one species of water spider, and they carry a little bubble of air around with them all the time, and they don't have a web, they just feed off and catch aquatic life in the water, some of the micro species that are in the water. To this little girl, it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I think it's those sort of things that stick with you. You know, I relate to my own childhood, that then you get that fascination, and every time then you're looking and taking more interest in what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And it's really important to get that appreciation hand on and give the youngsters those encounters. So it would be nice, don't quite know how we're going to do it, maybe with the local school or scout parties and things like that to do more wildlife events with them, I think.
No, that sounds fantastic.
Right, we'll go follow the lakeside here, so we only go round one side of the lake.
Yes, I've noticed that there's a barrier here.
Yes, and that's one of the protected habitat areas. We want the wildlife to feel confident coming in, but there's areas where they won't find people.
Yeah. So I can see evidence of health and safety with a safety ring here.
Yes, for our insurance, we have to have a couple of life rings on site. So although it's quite clear there should be no swimming here, people don't always obey the signs.
Yeah, just looking in the water here, very, very clear, not very deep here. And you can see the leaves, but it is beginning to go down. Yeah, but very clear.
Yes. One of the benefits of being in an area with gravel pits is it's like a giant filter. So the water is all the water running in here is filtered.
Yes.
Which hence you get the nice clear water.
So the water's totally contained within the pond. There's no sort of runoff anywhere.
There is runoff. So we are connected to the drainage in the next field.
Yeah.
And the whole area is pumped by the quarry. They have to pump the water out so that they can extract the stone.
Okay.
And that will have to be continued in perpetuity. Yeah. Otherwise, this site would completely flood.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So does that mean then that it doesn't have a chance to almost become stagnant?
It doesn't become stagnant. I think a lot of that comes from the plants.
Yeah.
So there's lots of aquatic plants in here that are oxygenating the water.
It is incredibly clear.
Yeah. And that then helps support the fish and all the other life that's
so what sort of fish do you have?
I don't know. We've not tried
underwater ones.
Them. yes. Seen them occasionally, but never had a really good look. So that's definitely something for the future. Perhaps we should do a fish survey.
I know some of the lakes around here, there certainly was a lake around here that had carp in, and people used to go fishing.
Yes. I believe these fish came from the quarry workers who stocked the lake because they used to use it in their lunch times and go fishing. But we don't, as it's a wildlife area now, we don't allow any fishing on here. And the fishermen have got plenty of alternative lakes around us. In fact, most of the lakes have gone across to become fishing lakes.
I can just see a depth gauge here.
Yes, so that we've just installed. And that's to allow us to monitor the water levels. So I mentioned before we're connected to the drainage at the quarry.
Yeah.
If it gets up to 500 millimetres, that's the height of the dam on our drainage. So this allows me to keep an eye on it, and then if we have a problem, I can let the quarry know that you need to increase the pumping because the water levels are getting too high.
Yeah.
But at the moment we're pretty stable, which is good to see, even after all the rain.
Yes. So, Augy, you with your knowledge of the of nature reserve and all the management practices you've got to do, this is something you're really sort of self-taught, are you?
No, I've got to give the credit to the people I've mentioned earlier. So it's all the people that have helped us, Sarah Lambert, Peter Kirby and John Oliver.
Yeah.
That's really where my knowledge is coming from.
Yeah.
So these are people that have worked with wildlife for most of their lives.
So it's their career.
Yes, and their areas of expertise.
Yeah.
Peter's actually published books on invertebrates and is quite an expert.
Yes.
But we're just looking up to the bird feeders there to see who's on them. They're looking nice and busy.
Yeah, it looks very busy.
Yeah, we support quite a big population of great tits and blue tits here. And then we'll get the long-tailed tits come in mob.
Yeah.
And feed off the fat balls quite regularly. We also see we'd get a dunnock there, the robins, chaffinches, and reed buntings. So we've got some reed buntings on site, and in the winter they'll come up and use the feeder, or at least the food that's fallen to the ground.
It looks quite busy. It looks as though they could get through the food fairly quickly.
Yes. I limit the top-ups to every 2 days. Potentially I could fill the seed feeder every day, but the squirrel quite enjoys the seed. Oh, right. So I think I would.
You're
make
feeding the squirrels as well, then?
Yes. We've got a couple of squirrels. They're not particularly a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm happy enough if they're only taking a bit of food.
Yeah. What's this I see here? A red label stuck over a branch.
Yes, so one of our volunteers and a former member of the committee, Pete Coles, has gone round putting labels on the trees. And we've had loads of really positive feedback about this. An awful lot of the visitors have said, "Oh, that's really interesting. I've gone round places, wondered what this tree was, but then now you can see it tells you what they are." So we're currently looking at a small leaved lime.
Augy, I see where we're walking now on this track quite a bit of moss.
Yes. Again, it's good to have all the diverse types of plants and things here. The moss, I've discovered, is essential for the birds. So this year, for the first time, we put up some bird boxes. I made kits to build the bird boxes, and we got Langtoft Primary School children to assemble them.
Oh, right.
So the Langtoft Primary School children built the bird boxes.
Yes.
We put up a total of 19 on site here, and most of them were occupied. And when we just recently cleaned them out, because you want to get rid of last year's nest material.
Yes.
Make sure there's no mites or anything in there. We use like a mite spray, so that when the next generation of birds come in, the chicks won't have any parasites or anything. So the moss is key for the birds in building their nests. As we were cleaning the nests out, obviously they look for soft material. Virtually all the birds that had built nests in the nest boxes had used moss as the main building material. And I was surprised because although we've seen it on this path, there doesn't seem to be that much on site. but they're obviously very good at finding it.
Yeah, amazing. I've just noticed in this lake that we're walking by the side, there's a couple of black birds, or not blackbirds, but here they are, just over here.
Yes, so what we have here, we're looking at a coot there. We've also got several little grebes. They're more down towards the far end of the lake, and you'll see them diving all the time, the little grebes.
Yeah.
We've also got a moorhen here, but I can't see it at the moment. I saw it the other day.
Just the one moorhen?
Yes, just the one moorhen, yes. So, a bit more elusive than the coots. The coots are generally
they're just
quite obvious.
Two coots.
We counted 3 pairs across this lake and the other lakes last summer, and they generally, there's the moorhen just gone across the far. Can you see with the orange?
Yeah, they're all living very happily together, aren't they?
Yeah. And we should, in this winter, over winter, we'll probably get some tufted ducks. We had quite a good population last winter.
Yeah. Has it iced over yet in the last couple of years?
No, not seen that yet, so we'll have to wait and see. It's been a while since we've had a very hard winter, isn't it?
You just hear that, one of those birds now.
Yeah, I think that was the moorhen
you
could hear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very peaceful down here, isn't it?
It is. You can hear there's lots of birds flying around us as well up in the trees. I love it sometimes when you're walking through and the birds are literally flitting around the trees and shrubs above your head.
They don't
almost keeping an eye on you, you know.
They are, but they're not. They don't appear to be too scared.
No.
Augy, what are you most proud of? What the team most proud of, and what's been the biggest achievement so far?
Several things really. I think initially how much work the volunteers achieved in being able to open the site up, particularly initially getting the paths re-established in here. That was a lot of work. To me, we talked about the dog walking path earlier, the success of that, the fact that the wildlife hasn't left the site. Our cameras are telling us that we are still getting all the deer, hares and all the other species badgers we've got in here. And to me, that's a massive success that the plan has worked. We've opened the site, but we appear to have maintained all the wildlife.
Tell us about some of the volunteers. What sort of people do it?
Pretty much all retirees. So I think you'll, I guess, find that with an awful lot of voluntary things. You need people that've got the time. We'd love more young people to become involved.
Yeah.
But if you're working, it's then very difficult to then give up extra time. You want your time off work, enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
We do have 1 or 2 young people involved, but that's obviously a bit limited as to when they're available.
Yeah. And how often do the volunteers come down?
So we have a working party every Wednesday. I think we've got the marsh harrier just flying around down over there. Can you see a large bird of prey?
Oh yes, just over the field.
Yes. So this is part of his territory. I think they roost somewhere up near Baston, but regularly fly down here over the lake.
Yes.
Giving it a look in, and then also all the gravel quarry.
Yeah.
But yes, we're very lucky. We have quite a reasonable number of volunteers, probably about 15, 12 fairly regular, who all come and do what is quite physical work here. It's not easy doing some of the stuff we do to maintain the site.
I should imagine pulling out saplings is quite hard work.
It is, yes, and I feel very guilty because I can think of at least one guy that's probably, if he's not 70, he's pretty close, that does that sort of work for us. So, but thankfully our volunteers seem to enjoy being involved.
Yeah.
And we do that one Wednesday morning every week.
Yeah.
We all come out.
And I guess if you're a retired person, it motivates you to get out of the house, see some fresh air, and have a bit of camaraderie.
Yes, and then also get a chance to enjoy this beautiful site.
Yeah.
It's a lovely place to come.
Yeah.
And even with the working parties, you'll still get the odd wildlife encounters, even though we're creating noise. An example would be, and it literally was only about 6 weeks ago, we were stood where we're standing now, the bench just about to start work, and 3 deer ran just down the bottom of this slope in front of us.
Amazing.
Which is just fantastic. You wouldn't normally ever get that close.
No. Very privileged, I bet.
Yes, and that was rather nice. They were roe deer, and it was 2 adults and a youngster being marshalled in between them.
Really?
Which was lovely to see. Yeah.
I've just noticed a couple of swans
Yes.
on one of the lakes. You just got the 2 swans, have you, here?
Just the 2 swans, yeah. And they weren't here in the summer, but they've moved in the autumn, and will probably stay over winter here now. They seem pretty happy.
Yeah. Have we missed any of the wildlife? I know we've discussed quite a few of the animals that have been here. Are there any other any other
I
animals?
made a mention of the number of moths.
350 was it, or 250?
350, yeah. I've recorded here 22 different species of butterfly, which is actually really good. I think the UK, it's something like 57 species.
Yeah.
But if you think, a lot of those are very specialised ones that are limited to quite rare and limited to particular areas. For me, I was quite excited to see clouded yellows. So we had a little resident population towards the end of the summer here, which was quite exciting. I hadn't ever seen those before. At the start of the spring, we have lovely little green hair streaks. I don't know whether you've ever seen those.
No.
They're most people will be familiar with the small blue butterflies.
Yeah.
The green hair streaks, the underwing has a really lovely iridescent green colour to it. And when they're flying, because the top of the wings are brown, you don't notice the green colour. It just looks like a little brown thing flitting about.
Yeah.
As soon as they rest on a tree or a leaf or a plant, you get to see this fantastic colour, and fortunately we've got a reasonable population here, which is rather nice.
The long-term aim is obviously to maintain what you've got. Are you expecting, as a result of all this, to actually encourage more different types of wildlife in?
Yes, that's our hope. Most of what you would expect to find here, you'll find here. There are some species of insects and things that we would like to encourage and see more of.
Yeah.
And if we're successful with inducing more wildflowers at the north end, we'll also help make that population more robust. So it's a whole food chain. If we can get more moths and more butterflies, that's more caterpillars to support the bird population. Yeah. And hopefully over time we'll get more birds move here. Already a good population, but things like the Scots pine trees we've got here, as they get mature, they could attract other more exotic species, I think crossbills. So potentially we could get more. We've had a few rare visitors. I've mentioned the kingfisher. It would be lovely to have one resident here. We're going to build a sand martin nest box. So sand martins are like the house martins or swallows and things you see maybe flying around your houses, but they tend to live in sandbanks. We're going to build a nest box, it's currently under construction, that will look like a sandbank, but provide a secure home for them. It'll have 42 nest boxes within it, this effectively false bank. Each pair of sand martins normally raises about 4 chicks, so if they use it, we could have a huge number of birds living here during the summer.
Yeah. So that hopefully next summer, 2023, they'll be there.
So we'll install it this winter. The construction of the nest box is almost complete.
Yes.
And then we're going to put it out over the larger of the 2 ponds in front of us here. And we know the sand martin's already here. They've been nesting in the quarry behind. Yeah. But the quarry is constantly working the ground there. So
they need a more permanent
residence. Yes. And if we provide that, we know that the Neem Park Trust that run Ferry Meadows helped us by providing...
That's Ferry Meadows in Peterborough.
Yes. Yeah. They provided the design.
Okay.
That was also copied by the Langdyke Trust down at Helpston, and they had birds in the first year. They put their nest box up. So we're hoping we see something similar here. I was going to mention also some of the rare birds. We did have Bitterns visit for a few weeks. They didn't move in, but again, it'd be lovely if we got something like that. The Bitterns are a heron-type bird.
Right.
Used to only find them in Norfolk, but they've been making their way across slowly to the East Midlands. There are some in some of the other lakes locally now, but we're hoping they might establish themselves here. So that would be quite exciting if we could do that.
Yeah. If there are any listeners who want to get involved with a nature reserve that's local to them, or they hear about a project that's starting off, what advice would you give them?
Probably the best organisation to get involved with is the Wildlife Trusts. They are always looking for volunteers. They have a huge number of sites to maintain. They do employ some permanent staff, but obviously haven't got the funds to employ enough people. So if you're interested, look up the Wildlife Trust, find out about your local reserves. Chances are they would be looking for people to come and help in working parties like we run.
Yeah.
So that would be a great way to start.
Yeah.
And then there's another group I'm involved with is called Nature locally, which is trying to get people to make things like local churchyards, roadside verges, much more wildlife friendly, so seeding those with wildflowers and even encouraging people to create wild areas in their gardens. All things like that can help.
Yeah.
If you provide a home for the wildlife, and it starts right down with insects who are sort of more towards the bottom of the food chain, all of that helps all wildlife right through to the birds and everything else.
Yeah. And is there anything, looking back since you've been doing the project over the last couple of years, is there anything that you wish you'd known before you'd started?
Yes. We touched on it earlier, the land drainage. We did have a problem back in May with the water here, and we had no idea of how all the drainage and pumping worked. So I had to find that out when we had a problem. And if I'd known in advance, I could have got to the root of the problem much quicker. But yes, that would be the only one.
There's always something, isn't there, in these things?
Yes.
If people are interested in Penfield, where can they find out more about it?
Well, we're a bit behind at the moment. I have got a colleague who's working hard on constructing a website. It's not finished yet. There will be a website longer term. You might be able to find some information through the Langtoft Parish Council website. But what we'll do, as soon as the website's properly up and running, I'll give you the link and you can put that on your website along with the podcast. Yeah.
Well, what I'll do in the meantime, Augy, is I'll when the show comes out in a few weeks' time, I'll put on the show notes, I'll put the address of Penfield. So if anybody's interested in coming along, they can do so.
They can, yes, and come and enjoy the fantastic site we've got here. The key thing with seeing nature is there's an element of luck, and you've often got to be quiet and patient. So do come along, enjoy one of our benches, sit and take in the views, and who knows what you might see. Spring and summer are the best times because that's when you'll get lots more insects and things flying around. Much quieter this time of year, but even so, a bit of patience can be rewarded and a bit of luck as well sometimes, and you'll never know what you'll see.
Yeah. Augy, it's been great talking to you today. Thank you ever so much for your time.
You're welcome, and look forward to seeing you at our working parties, and I'll get you working.
Okay.
Doing plenty more.
Yeah, I better not give you my email address, Augy. Yeah, thanks very much. You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all the very best.